Welcome to the podcast. Today is such a good day because I get to work with Daniel Sharman in my job, but I also get to work with him today in this podcast. And Daniel is the Jedi Knight of growth for allied health. Daniel, what was it that made you agree to come on this podcast and just show everyone what they need to know about how to grow without going crazy?
A couple of things. Obviously, we've known each other for a little while. We've worked together. We knew each other prior to working together as well, which helps. So, didn't feel it was someone reaching out to me that I'd never heard of before, which happens from time to time. We're all pretty prone to that on LinkedIn. And then the other reason why I wanted to jump on is that I have had the opportunity to start a business from just being myself, and being in the trenches. And then we've now grown to over 40 staff. Over 30 of those are allied health practitioners across Victoria and New South Wales, which is really cool. We've had some amazing experiences. We've had some really low experiences as well, as anyone would growing a business. And I think just the opportunity to share that with people. And I obviously listen to the podcast. I haven't missed an episode. So hearing what others are up to is really valuable for me. Sometimes it's a bit of inspirational motivation. Other times it's some really tactical knowledge. So I figured let's jump on and have that chat. And who knows, maybe someone benefits. I love talking about this stuff, so I benefit from just being here.
I get it. So for people, Daniel and I, talking about things that we do that help us to grow is asking my son about Minecraft and then wondering why 5 minutes later he's still hearing about Minecraft. But I can tell listeners that having known Daniel for quite a while, he just says what he thinks. He's honest. It's tactful, Daniel. You're not a goose, but he will tell
Yeah.
you the truth if you create the space for him to tell you the truth. So Daniel, let's start with some hardish stuff that people really want to know because they're not going to be honest about this, but you will. Obviously, you've grown from 0 participants to 1,000. That comes with a lot of pressure. What on earth do you do to manage those hard times in your family, in your personal life, in your sense of self-confidence, when the growth is suddenly not happening because it's not a straight line graph? How do you do that?
My thoughts on pressure and dealing with pressure, I'm a little bit contradictory to other people's, and it's pretty important to be clear that not one way works for everyone. Um, but I eat, sleep, and breathe business. I love it. I love what I do. My wife and my daughter are my priorities in life. They're number one and number two evenly. And then unfortunately for everyone else, it's business. That's how what my life looks like. Doesn't mean that there's other things that aren't important, but for me, that's what works. And having done that now for years, my outlook on how I manage pressure or stress is that usually pressure and stress come from one of two issues. Either one is a lack of knowledge. So I don't know how to fix this. I've never fixed this before. Why, when I'm doing everything right, are we stuck? Are we plateauing? Lack of knowledge is actually an okay one to deal with because there's usually a solution, which is to either learn, which is not always as simple as reading something in once off, but or the other one is to pay for that knowledge, to go to someone who's been there, done that, doesn't have to be the exact version of it, and to pay down your ignorance tax, I guess, with your bank account and have them give you that knowledge. Um, the other one that I think is more common for business owners, common for business owners and also common for other people who are in any version of doing whether they're working a job, whether at school, whatever, is the inability to make a decision. Or some people, analysis paralysis is that nice little term that people use. That's a harder one to get through because that's a more of a mindset problem. And what I do now is that I remember when I started out, I didn't actually have analysis paralysis because I had no information to make a good decision based on. So what I did is I trusted my gut, and my gut got me to where I am. And so it's probably what I should trust moving forward is the way I look at it is I'm facing this pressure or this stress. Usually the first thing you think of is probably the thing you're going to do anyway. And it's you can and my wife tells me this, you can sit and stress on it and talk through it and come up with a million different, yeah, options, but you're usually going to go with the first one. Um, and so trusting my gut I've found is a good way to deal with that for me personally. Um, But then if I'm really stuck and I don't know if this is something I don't know, or I don't know if this is just me unable to make a decision, I'll just switch off. And I mean switch off. No work, no phone, nothing. It'll just be me in a quiet room, or it'd be me and my wife, and I make the decision that when I leave that, I'm going to know what's coming next, and I'm just going to do it, and whatever happens, happens. Um, there's a story I love, which is it's a Jerry Seinfeld story, who's obviously one of the most famous comedians of all time, and he gets writer's block, as anyone who is creative would. And his thing was, I sit in a room for 4 hours, whatever it was, with pen and paper and nothing else, and I don't have to do anything. But if I'm going to do something, it's right. And I've felt that confronting it head on for me works really, really well. That's the way I like to do it. And then I just apply that across whatever it is, whether it's leadership, not knowing how to support someone, or what I should be helping them with next, whether it's marketing, should I be doing cold outreach? Should I be looking at my warm audience? Should I be doing paid ads? Should I be printing off flyers and popping them under someone's windscreen wiper? Or systems. If I feel something's not working well in the business in terms of the systems that we use, we've obviously gone from having no clients to 1,000. We have very different systems. The way we did it when there was 10 clients and myself on my own, it would break in 2 seconds flat where we are now. But I just love the pressure. And so I just confront it head on, and I get a thrill from facing the unknown and then just attacking the problem. That's my opinion on it. And I guess the other thing I try and think of is that in business, there are people that are 10 years ahead of me. There are people that are 50 years ahead of me. There are people whose businesses are 10 times the size or 50 times the size. They worked it out. So it's not impossible. It's just not easy. And that's super okay, is
That
my
makes
opinion.
sense. I
Yeah.
get that. And I'm actually excited to hear that because right now, if we're honest, in NDIS world, the level of negativity is unbelievable. And
Yeah.
it's almost it's the discouragement is the chosen milkshake that everyone's drinking. And there are so many reasons to feel discouraged about a system wide thing, but there are also so many reasons to feel excited about individual lives that we're helping. And I can see that you're putting your eyes on the things that are in your control, but you're also willing to roll the dice and go, if it comes up a one, two, and three, it's going to be a problem for me. It comes up a four, five, six, we're okay. But you've calculated the odds and you're willing to do whatever it takes instead of just hiding or whinging. How do you get yourself out of a hard spot? I know that with allied health, there's all this new stuff coming out now that everyone in allied health is not looking forward to. How do you pull yourself out of a hard spot where you start to feel sorry for yourself or you start to feel, oh, it's so hard? How do you do that?
I think in a business sense, there's a couple of things that work really well. I try and remind myself that there are very few industries that crumbled to nothing. That's not super common. Even newspapers evolved. Newspaper now you can get it online. Journalism still exists. It's an industry that at some point we thought may have fallen over given the digital change. But um, I don't believe that allied health as an industry will fall over. I don't believe that for NDIS providers, the industry is going to fall over. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That's definitely not what's happening, but it's not going to fall over. So there has to be something positive to find to keep going. And particularly as what now is like a bit of it's not a large business, but it's larger than what it was. My day to day sometimes is just putting out fires, and that's because that's my responsibility. I could sit there and complain about that, but that's what I signed up for. And so I try and take time, and I actually get our general manager to do this. Try and take time to celebrate the things that are working really well. So we have this super insignificant thing where we just do it's an email on Fridays called Feel Good Fridays, and it is just give us what worked, send through the win that you had. Let's go on a parent support group on Facebook where people are talking about the business or someone in the business and what they're doing, and go, let's not forget that amongst a couple of bad things, there's a lot of really, really good stuff going on. And I think as business owners, that's important because, as I said, you are attached to the bad stuff, You are personally offended when the bad stuff happens because you didn't want it to be that way. You panic that it's going to break and you're going to lose your business, lose your house, live at your parents' place, go back all the years of effort you've put in, been there, thought through that. It is scary, but I still truly believe that if you set out to help people and you do everything in your power to help people, that there is an industry still going to be there at the end that you can be a part of. I don't think it's all bad, in my opinion.
That makes sense. And it's measured. And I don't know anyone who, the people listening to this, some of them are directors, some of them are BDMs, some of them are allied health, some of them are support workers. But it's like when you get to the so-called top of the food chain and people aspire to that spot, but when you get there, it's actually not a fun place to be. Your bank account might like it,
Mhm.
depending which year, but it's not always fun. And it's a lot of people don't calculate that. They're chasing the promotion because they think that they get to the top, it's going to be amazing. But it's like, I've been at the top of something similar to what you are, Daniel. I am so glad I'm not there anymore. I'm so grateful. It's something I could have sustained for a season of a few years, but if I had to do what you do for, say, a decade or two, I don't know if I'm built that. How does your family go with you and the ups and downs of business and life and its time constraints? Because that was something I found really hard when I was sitting in a similar spot to you.
It's a really good question, and my wife would be better at answering it than I am, but I'm going to try and give you her truthful opinion rather than my version of her opinion.
Give it a crack. I'll let.
It's definitely hard being, married to someone or with someone who's owning a business, particularly in a space where there's a lot of negativity. Um, it's For me, it's about not setting unrealistic expectations on my family and then talking through and them not having unrealistic expectations on me. So when it comes to my daughter, for example, I will not miss a swimming lesson. That's not happening. I will not miss a horse riding lesson. That's not happening. But there are things that might occur day to day that if I am in the thick of it and we're in a season where we're growing, or we're in a season where for some reason we've stagnated or declined, I'm going to be at my two most stressful, jam-packed calendars, chock-a-block full times. I'm going to miss a few things here and there. So I think it's about structuring your life around what's going on for you at the time. And you've got to have someone that supports you because like I don't know what it would be like if it was the other way around. I think that my wife is an incredible listener and will listen for legitimate hours on end if that's what's necessary. And then she is also very good at putting me back on the track that I need to be on, which, as I said before, is what does your gut say?
Wow.
What do you think is right? Because you can sit there and talk through the options over and over again. But if you become a business owner, you're probably a risk taker. I don't know that you could not be. And risk takers just trust their gut and just do it and figure out the consequences later. So you're going to go back and do that regardless. You go, oh, these three things are way more likely to succeed. Which one do you want to do? I want to do the fourth one that doesn't make any sense. Well, you're going to do it. So just do it. And my wife's really good at pointing me back in that direction and supporting me and making sure I keep my head screwed on. And sometimes telling me, like, go for a run.
Wow.
Leave this house and go for a run right now.
Wow.
You're not helping anyone.
Oh my goodness. Your wife and mine could get together sometime and they would have a lot to relate to. And then when you need to reset, let's imagine
Hmm.
you've gone through a couple of hard weeks or a
Yep.
couple of hard months.
Mhm.
How do you reset yourself? Like me, I know it's been quite a while since I've done a lot of things I love to do because this last season for me has just been work, 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 work. I've been inundated and I'm happy and joyful and grateful for that. But I also know that that's not sustainable. So
Mhm.
what do you do for you that keeps your work sustainable, especially when things are hard?
It was probably trickier prior to the birth of my daughter because now that circuit breaker is constant. She's not quite 1.5 yet. Every week something's being learnt. Every week some new thing is coming up, and that works as a circuit breaker. But when it gets really bad and I need to implement something myself, it is probably most of the time is going to go back to what were the things that I enjoyed when I was younger and just setting some time aside to go and do those things. And what I've done recently, which is arguably the worst decision you could make for your physical health, but one of the best you could make for your mental health, is I decided to go back and sign up for a reserves AFL club.
Wow.
So, so I am playing local reserves footy at an area, and if you are worried or stressed about something in business, when another 100 kilo person tackles you and lands on top of you, you'll pretty quickly forget about it.
That makes
If you,
sense.
if you want to reset, like, that's talking about a reset. But it's just, look, it's something that I think is really fun. I really enjoy it. It's something I know I can switch off from. There are things that I've tried that don't work for me as well. I don't really. I will go out for dinner, but I don't go out and stay out late anymore and those sort of things. Partially, I've grown past those things just as a person, but also I don't find them helpful for me. They don't work as a great circuit breaker for me. But for someone else, they could be the best circuit breaker ever. It could just be spending time with their friends. For me, right now, in this part of my life, is having my head taken off by someone I'm mates with at footy training and shaking hands afterwards.
I think that's remarkable because I talk to a lot of directors, right? And they'll say a lot of physical things like jogging or for you footy. There's another guy I work with, boxing, and or they'll go the other extreme. I want to go and I don't know what they're called. My wife knows what I'm talking about, like massage days or whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever they are, I
yeah.
loves it. That they'll go to that sort of land, but it's like the people who I see struggling in your shoes are the people who don't have anything.
Mhm.
And then we tell ourselves this is fine, this is normal.
Mhm.
Well, it might be fine normal for 3 weeks or even 2 months, but it's not good for us in the long term. Is it, or Daniel, if I ask you some hard questions about what steps you took to grow your business? Because not everyone can say you have 1,000 participants who are benefiting from the last few years of my life.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about the difference between the systems you had in place for, say, your first 50 participants to, say, the systems you had in place at, say, 500 participants to, say, the systems you have in place now when you've got 1,000 participants and growing? Like the reworking of systems, like how do you do that? How do you accept that you have to do it? How do you bring your staff along to be still joyful about let's rebuild again? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely a process, and the bigger you get, the harder it is to change. I guess the first bit I'll touch on is the difference between sort of like 50, 500, and 1,000 is that when we had 50 or less participants, we were not looking for a great deal of information other than the fact that someone wanted us to provide a service to them because there is just a reality in business. You need to keep the door open. And that's okay. It doesn't work as you get bigger, but it's okay at the start. And usually, you've got a really personal, connected relationship with each person, even if you have a couple of staff, with each person that you're working with, each person your staff are working with. It's not hard to maintain 40, 50 relationships with different clients. That's a manageable thing to do. So they're not expecting you to have a great system. They're just happy that you're a person who talks to them like a person. And that's great. Fast forward to 500. And there's probably some checkpoints in there. But fast forward to 500, and now you need to start thinking about, is this a person that I am best suited, that our organization is best suited to help? Or is this someone who we need to be clear that we can't help with what they're looking for? Maybe can suggest someone who can. Um, and that was kind of the approach there, was getting that extra little bit of information, um, making sure we're the right person for them. And often it happens multiple times a week now where we're not. And that is something you get used to really, really quickly when things like word of mouth spread. Everyone will come looking for you, and sometimes they're not looking for what you can provide. We get asked for OT driver training assessments, and it's just not something that we do. Really complicated progressive neuro disorders for occupational therapy, not something we do. Bonus, thanks to LinkedIn, we know some people who do. So that's a great part of it. That was kind of 500. And now that we're at 1,000, what I would say is that it now becomes about consistency. And really making sure that every box is checked off at every stage because you can't get a hold of problems quickly if they're happening as part of a process. There's so many moving pieces that if you try and grab a problem and fix it quickly, it just doesn't work at that scale. So then it's not just about do we have your information? Do we know if we're the right fit? We now deep dive before we even start. We deep dive into anything and everything, strengths and dislikes base. We dive into anything and anything about cultural and linguistic diversity, all these sort of things that in the past we could deal with at a first appointment. Often as well, 5 years ago, there was so much demand that people didn't care whether you worked well with them, they just cared that you were there. That's not the case anymore. I have to open up, I have to go to a networking event to see that. And so now it's about treating it as a massive business that no longer can just be represented by me and my best interests and my hopes and dreams. It now has to be systematized down to the very, very final level. So when we send out a form, we need that form to be sent out again. If it doesn't get signed, then we need notification when it gets signed. We need a notification if it's not signed. Then we need a system to contact someone if it's not signed or if it is signed. Becomes, it looks more complicated on paper because you just can't do it all yourself anymore. And that's what that kind of looks like. Sorry,
That's all
and
good.
that's what that kind of looks like across those different levels in terms of systemization.
Wow. So I
Um,
guess you're saying as you grow, you end up, you can't just solve a problem anymore.
mhm.
You need a system that's built to see a problem coming and go, actually, we're not built to help you, but
Yep.
go and meet this person over here. They are. Because otherwise, imagine if you did take on everyone when you've got 1,000 participants who you're not suited to. Imagine what that would do to staff morale and other things like that. I see a lot of people in allied health who are doing just that though. They're still taking
Mhm.
on everyone, or they feel a sense of pride, or this pride. Oh, we'll take anyone. It's like, great, but are you actually serving them if it's outside your skill set? What are your thoughts on that? I'm open to you saying, Michael, they're actually right and I'm wrong. But like, what's going through your head when I say I like how you're doing it because I feel like there's honesty in it? But is there more in that picture than I'm saying?
I don't think so. I believe that, and I will say that this applies now and may not apply 5, 6 years ago because there was far more demand than there was. There still is still a demand supply discrepancy, but it was very, very, very bad 5, 6 years ago. People were on wait lists for years and years and years at a time. Now there are far more organizations, sole traders, different people in the industry that are involved and set up to work with NDIS participants, including those that are hyper niched down to like their specialty is so select. Those people 5, 6 years ago might not have liked the complication of how the NDIS worked, but now they've changed their tone. They're more involved. I see more and more providers now accepting people from a range of different schemes and those sort of things in general. So I think that now more than ever, with the interconnectedness of providers and with the demand not being as far above the supply as it used to be, that it does not make sense to try and help someone who you are not the right person for. I don't believe that you can go into that and say, I have the right intention if you know from the get-go you're not going to be able to achieve what they want. I do get and I do sympathize with but they might have no one else that can help them. I sympathize with it. I don't agree with it, is my view.